Welcome to the spring edition of Office Hours. After I left the University of Washington in 1975, my wife and I had an opportunity to do what we've always called our lap of America, circling around the United States, working and living in 6 other states, and having a chance to see how the rest of the United States works. And in every place we went, I loved to tell the stories of the city of Seattle and the state of Washington, how Washington State had emerged as an incredibly vibrant, innovative culture, how the business and industry here was becoming diversified and completely unlike what it was in 1975. It was a huge source of pride to me and my family to watch what was going on here in our beloved Northwest. And it's watching that and knowing that history that's so frustrating to me right now as we see what's going on in the state legislature and how the state has decided to treat higher education. As everyone watching this knows, to have an innovative economy, to have an economy that moves the state forward, to provide opportunities for our citizens of all walks of life, higher education and the entire system of higher education is absolutely essential. You simply cannot, in the 21st century, grow an economy, provide ladders to economic success, provide the kinds of opportunities that our citizens always have, if you do things like are being proposed in the state legislative budget right now. Indeed, the state's budget, as it's being proposed by the Senate and the House, would eliminate 10,000 slots across all of higher education every year. Think about that for a minute. 10,000 students and their families who would not have an opportunity to go to college. What would that look like year in and year out if those cuts stayed in place? The state would see 10,000 families that don't have in the midst of them a college-educated person in the workforce. They'd see all the attendant advantages of a higher education degree not available to them. Every year, 10,000 families. If you looked at here at the University of Washington, the impact of probably 2,200 to 2,500 students that wouldn't be coming here to our 3 campuses. If you looked at the time of degree being stretched out so that students had to stay here for 1 or 2 or 3 more quarters to get the classes that they needed, the impact that has on those individuals and their families and the workforce around them. These kinds of proposals are not anything like the Washington that I grew up in. The Washington I grew up in valued those kinds of opportunities for life. It valued the creation of innovation. It valued the kinds of experiences that we all know the University of Washington and our other universities in this state provide. This is really a complete shift in the thinking of what the state of Washington is all about. It is most certainly not the Washington way as I know it. The state of Washington has, in the past few decades, produced an economy that's amazingly vibrant. It's also more dependent upon science and technology and an educated workforce than any other state in the Union. Indeed, the state of Washington employs on a per capita basis more recipients with bachelor's and graduate degrees in science, engineering, and technological fields than any other state. But there is a huge problem with all of that. We also are, in fact, one of the worst producers of people with those degrees. We rank near the bottom of all states in the percentage of our students and our citizenry who get degrees at the 4-year level, and especially in science and engineering and technical fields. What that means is the businesses of the state of Washington have to go outside of Washington to recruit into the state people who have those technical skills. I love to say in front of a variety of editorial boards and audiences that Washington State runs the very real risk of having the great jobs in the state go to people that we import while the sons and daughters of Washington wind up washing their cars. That's not exactly the scenario you want for a state. You want to have Washington young people and not so young people filling all of those great jobs, not having to go to California or Michigan or Bangalore to find people who are going to take the jobs in Washington. We simply must do that work here. That's why having a vibrant funding model for higher education is so essential, and that's what we're working on. What we know today, sitting here the week of April 6th, is that the state legislature has proposed the deepest cuts into higher education in the United States. While there's other states that have worse financial situations, California with the largest deficits, Michigan with the highest unemployment rates, Florida with all of the problems it has with real estate and tourism, it's only in Washington where we've proposed having deep, deep cuts that would take so many thousands of students out of the higher education system. This is, of course, a very, very problematic circumstance. It means that our students will have to stay in school longer, as I've already mentioned. They'll have to look further to find educational opportunities, perhaps even leave the state of Washington and incur the costs that go along with that. It will make it harder and harder for our students to get access to the programs they need. It will cause increases in class size and a shortage of available courses. These are things that we simply cannot tolerate. So what are we doing about it? Well, first of all, we're working with the legislative leaders in the governor's office to make sure they understand the implications of what has been proposed by the legislature. The legislative leaders themselves understand that they have a very, very difficult problem on their hands, and we need to be sympathetic with that problem. They're not doing these things because they want to. They're doing these things because they think they have to. We have to help them see some other options that are available and find ways to solve this very difficult financial situation that we all find ourselves in. We're trying to get more state general fund put back into the budgets. We're trying to get more federal funds from the stimulus package put back into the higher education budget. And yes, even though we don't like it, we're also encouraging them to increase tuition. Now, the tuition story is one that we all worry about. We pride ourselves at the University of Washington in the economic diversity of all of our students. In fact, we have one of the most economically diverse student bodies of any university of our kind in the country. We are deeply committed to maintaining that. We are never going to find ourselves in a position where your income level or who your families are or your station in life is going to be a determinant of whether or not you're a UW student. That's not who we are. That's not what we stand for. We are, in fact, proposing significant tuition increases of about 14% at the University of Washington for our undergraduate resident students. What we would do, though, is we'd provide as much financial aid as humanly possible to mitigate the impacts of those increases on our students. A 14% increase for next year would be about $875, a lot of money to be sure. But at the same time, we've seen increases in the Pell Grant program at the federal level, increases in the state need-based grant program, and increases in the federal tuition tax credits, the so-called HOPE tax credit program, that for families who make less than $160,000 a year, those funds together would mean that very, very few, if any, students under $160,000 would have greater out-of-pocket expenses. Indeed, we may find ourselves in a situation where some of those students are actually in a better position than they are right now because of those new aid programs, and that's a great thing. Students whose families make over $160,000, they unfortunately are going to have to pay these increases, but we think that's still a great investment in their future and well worth spending the money on. It's always been the role of the University of Washington to provide our citizens with access to the highest quality educational experience possible. And that's what we're going to do, not just now, but well into the future. We're going to have to work hard at it. We're going to have to make sure that every dollar we have is spent as wisely and as successfully as we know how. We're going to have to try some new innovations, some new approaches to things to make sure that we can get through this period and come out the other end the great university that we are today for 5, 10, 20, and 50 years going into the future. I need to work with you on those issues. You need to help us find solutions to those kinds of problems. We've also always been a fabulous value. We're one of the lowest tuition universities of our kind in the entire country. Even after the 14% tuition increase, for example, we'd still have the lowest tuition rate of any of our peer universities around the United States. But we have to make sure that students also get their money's worth. When they pay more tuition, we need to make sure they get a great education, and we're going to do that. But we have to do it all together. It's going to be challenging, it's not going to be easy, but the University of Washington is going to persevere and continue to be the great university for the state of Washington that it always has been. As always, I'd really like to hear your feedback, especially right now during these very challenging times. Your thoughts and opinions are very, very important to me. None of us has the wisdom to do all of this on our own. We need lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, lots of innovation to be successful. So please share those ideas with me. You can always go to my website at washington.edu/president and post your comments. I look forward to reading them. And thanks again for taking time to look at this edition of Office Hours.